Dirt Trax Test Ride.
I can say without question, no vehicle we've ever tested has been hyped up as much as Kawasaki's Teryx H2. Kawasaki's been teasing us with quick sound clips and short, smoky, darkly lit videos for almost 2 years. Now that Kawasaki's Teryx H2 is finally here, you, me, and everybody else wants to know, is it what we expected, and does it live up to the hype? The Teryx H2 is currently available in 3 configurations: the 4-seat H2, the 4-seat H2 Deluxe ES, and the 5-seat H2 Deluxe ES. In Canada, only the 5-seat Deluxe ES is offered. All 3 models feature the same chassis, engine, driveline, and wheel and tire setups. The difference is in the seating configuration and the included extras. Obviously, the 4-seat models have 4 high-back bucket seats, 2 up front and 2 out back with a center console. The Deluxe ES models feature a 10-inch Garmin tread in the dash with speakers in the doors, Fox 3.0 live valve shocks, and Kawasaki's electronically controlled suspension system, or KEX for short. The 5-seat model like we have here has a bench seat in the back with retractable 4-point harnesses for up to 3 passengers, which is an answer to a question people have been asking for a very long time. Kawasaki is the first manufacturer to offer a 5-seat sport side-by-side, and I find it amazing that the first place it's offered is in a 253 horsepower supercharged weapon like this one. I would argue that the formula for building a monster of a side-by-side isn't really that complicated. Big horsepower, big suspension, big tires. But what is complicated is building a monster with manners, and that's exactly what Kawasaki has done. The Teryx H2 is a monster in both size and horsepower. Physically, it looks huge and imposing, but when you climb inside, it's one of the most automotive-feeling interiors I've ever seen. From the perfectly finished inside door panels to the firm but comfortable, aggressively bolstered seats, to the steering wheel with suspension and audio controls, to the interior coloration, to the huge 10-inch Garmin tread in-dash display and full-color digital display for the driver, it just feels, I guess the word would be classy. Ride and handling are also highly refined. Kawasaki's KEX system uses an inertial measurement unit, or an IMU, instead of sensors to control the suspension, and it does a great job. The soft setting is very soft, which personally I like a lot. I mean, you've got 24 inches of travel front and rear, so in soft mode it should feel like you're floating over the ground, and it does. Normal mode is great for faster riding on rougher terrain, where you want a good mix of chassis stability and big bump capability. I found the firm setting too firm for any kind of real trail riding, but on smooth surfaces at higher speeds, it does a great job at keeping the chassis flat and stable, which is highly confidence-inspiring. Overall handling is excellent. It's predictable, not twitchy at all, and when it sets up in a fast corner, it stays planted. It doesn't roll to the outside, and the back end doesn't feel loose. Now let's talk about power. A big vehicle needs big horsepower. I mean, it just makes sense. This 999cc 16-valve dual overhead cam inline 4-cylinder engine with its gear-driven supercharger makes a claimed 253 horsepower, which means that, at least for now, it claims the title as the highest horsepower factory side-by-side ever. But here's the kicker. Compared to its competition, the Teryx5 H2 isn't excessively heavy. Power to weight does matter, and at first glance you might assume that Kawasaki's Teryx H2 has consumed a few more cheeseburgers than the competition, which would effectively negate the extra horsepower, but that simply is not the case. Comparatively, its power to weight ratio is excellent, but this is where a buyer will need to manage their expectations, because while the horsepower will make you giddy, the clutching seems to struggle to manage it under certain conditions. Polaris and Kawasaki are the only manufacturers speccing their highest horsepower side-by-sides with CV belt transmissions, which I very much prefer versus a gear-on-gear transmission. Now, I get that geared transmissions are more durable under sustained full throttle runs and aren't as affected by excessive heat buildup, but you just can't match the uninterrupted power delivery that a CVT offers. When you stand on the throttle from a full stop in the dirt, the H2 could probably be used to dig your basement. It absolutely shreds anything underneath its wheels. But when you do the same thing on a grippy surface like pavement or other hardpack, acceleration is softer than expected. In the dirt, the H2 will keep its wheels spinning if you need to throttle through a corner, but on high traction surfaces, it struggles to maintain peak RPM. It's like the secondary clutch is opening too early and letting the belt drop too soon. With that said, when it does shift out fully, it will hit an indicated 100 miles per hour top speed before the limiter kicks in, which is the fastest I've ever gone in a stock side-by-side. In an upcoming episode, we're going to take a deeper look at Kawasaki's Teryx H2. In that episode, we'll talk more about all of the features and technology that it's working with. Today, I wanted to focus more on how it performs. I have spent a solid amount of time getting to know the Teryx H2 on fast trails and have come away very happy with it on every level. Ride quality, stability, handling, power, comfort, and ergonomics, usable technology, it all works and it all just feels right. With the Teryx H2, Kawasaki has finally given us the sports side-by-side we knew they were capable of, and it is definitely as impressive as we always knew it could be. Kawasaki's all-new Teryx H2 could be described using words like awesome, incredible, crazy, insane, or amazing because it absolutely is all of those things. But it would be a shame to only think of the performance aspects of the H2 without looking deeper into the technology behind them. So that's what we're going to do today, because there's so much more to the H2 than just earth-shredding performance. Obviously, a lot of what makes the Teryx H2 so impressive is the power, and we will get there. But I want to start by talking about the chassis and suspension, because all that power would mean nothing if the ride and handling were just mediocre. The chassis is made of welded tubular steel and has been designed for maximum rigidity. A rigid chassis is important for predictable and precise handling. The ROP certified roll cage is low, giving the H2 a highly aggressive appearance. AA arms up front are built from welded steel and are truly massive. This also helps with extra rigidity, and that makes the H2 feel more planted and stable in all conditions. The lower arms are also arched for increased ground clearance. The rear four-link trailing arm suspension design keeps the rear wheels moving in a straight up and down orientation, all but eliminating changes to toe and caster angles as the suspension cycles through its travel. The beefy box steel trailing arms are arched for better ground clearance, as are the lower control arms. The Teryx H2 boasts a more than impressive 24 inches of rear and 23 inches of front wheel travel. And in really rough high-speed conditions, the travel feels almost bottomless. And this is also aided by the KECS electronic suspension system. KECS stands for Kawasaki Electronically Controlled Suspension. It consists of a set of massive Fox 3.0 live valve internal bypass shocks, a 6-axis inertial measurement unit, steering angle and shock speed sensors, a control unit, the in-gauge display, and steering wheel mounted selection buttons. The KEX ECU gathers information from the IMU, the engine ECU, and the steering and shock speed sensors. Using finely tuned algorithms, it then determines which compression settings are necessary to keep the chassis level and stable. KEX is really impressive in its ability to provide both extremely smooth suspension characteristics when you want them and a high level of chassis stability when you need it. Now, let's talk about the heart of the Teryx H2, its motor. Kawasaki first introduced the H2 engine platform in a motorcycle. That configuration included a sequential shift manual transmission. Here on the Teryx H2, power is transferred to the wheels via an all-new CV belt transmission, which many side-by-side riders prefer because the CVT is constantly adjusting drive ratios as conditions change without requiring any interruption in power delivery. The H2's engine displaces 999 cc's, or just a hair under 1 liter. It features a 16-valve dual overhead cam design. It's a wet sump engine with an auxiliary oil cooler, dual radiators, and is fed through a quartet of electronically controlled 40mm dual-injected throttle bodies. Power output is claimed to be 253 ponies at 9,000 RPM, making it the highest horsepower production side-by-side ever made. The peak torque of an impressive 146.3 pound-feet is reached at 8,800 RPM. Everybody knows that the Teryx H2's power plant is supercharged, but the way that it's supercharged may not be what you're used to. Instead of a screw-type top-mounted supercharger like you'd find on a car or truck, the H2 features what I would describe as a gear-driven turbocharger with intercooler. The supercharger and intercooler cover are painted red, which is cool, but when you look at it, it looks exactly the same as a turbo, but mounted to the side of the engine. It's driven by the crankshaft via a set of planetary gears instead of exhaust pressure. The planetary gears allow it to spin up to 130,000 RPM. The benefits of a supercharger are pretty straightforward. First, it doesn't need to build boost like a turbo. Boost is basically instant and lag is almost non-existent. Boost pressure also builds in tandem with engine RPM, so power delivery is far more linear without the typical surge of horsepower associated with a traditional turbo. On top of that, because the turbo is not driven by hot exhaust gases, it operates at lower temperatures, which results in less heat around the engine. And finally, this type of supercharger makes utilizing an intercooler to keep intake air as cool as possible much easier. An electronically controlled blow-off valve releases excess intake pressure when you let off the throttle. The sound is absolutely addictive. Because the blow-off valve is controlled by the ECU, it doesn't just dump pressure arbitrarily. It does it when it needs to in order to maintain smooth and linear power output. The H2's engine is drive-by-wire and features 3 throttle modes. The lowest mode is extremely mellow and does a great job of filtering out throttle inputs to keep operations smooth. The power curve is very linear. The middle setting still filters small throttle inputs as your foot moves on the pedal in bumpy conditions, but it filters less than the low setting. The throttle curve here is more aggressive. Now in the highest performance setting, there is little to no throttle filtering and the power curve is ramped up aggressively. Apparently, when Kawasaki goes big, they do it right. Everything about the Teryx H2 feels big, including its 33-inch tires mounted to 16-inch true beadlock wheels. This is the largest factory tire and wheel setup ever. But to help stop a vehicle this big with tires this size, the Teryx H2 needs 270mm discs at all 4 corners and has 3 piston calipers up front and 2 piston calipers in the rear. The interior of the Teryx H2 is not something we can just skip over for 2 very important reasons. The first one is that it is one of the nicest, most refined side-by-side interiors I've ever seen. The seats are fantastic, they're comfortable and supportive. The dash looks amazing with a full-color TFT gauge and the optional 10-inch Garmin tread. The steering wheel has a super high-end feel and includes buttons for your stereo and KEX settings. Also, retractable 4-point harnesses for everyone is just so convenient and is definitely safer than 3-points. So that stuff's all really nice, but the second reason the Teryx H2's interior needs to be talked about is because of the 5-seater's rear bench seat. This is the first sport side-by-side that can seat 5 people, all of whom get retractable 4-point harnesses. This is huge because a gripe of so many sport side-by-side buyers is that their family of 5 simply won't fit. Kawasaki is the first sport side-by-side manufacturer to address this, and we truly hope more will follow. Now, obviously, the 10-inch Garmin tread in the dash of the ES models is fantastic. It offers so much functionality, I'd need like an entire episode to go over it all. But what's important is that all the necessities are there. GPS mapping, gauge displays, vehicular information, stereo controls, and phone connectivity are all things people expect from their top-of-the-line sports side-by-sides these days, and the Teryx H2 has them. There are countless other features and specs we could discuss here. The standard ones like speed-sensitive power steering, shiftable 4x4, adjustable seats, storage, and power outlets are the things you'd simply expect from side-by-sides today of any level. They aren't revolutionary, but they work how you want and need them to. With that said, it's pretty clear that Kawasaki took a no-holds-barred approach designing this thing. Its features and specs are more than just interesting. They're both surprising and impressive, which is exactly how I would describe the Teryx H2.
Make sure to subscribe and comment below for real interaction with the Dirt Trax crew.